Here we connect with the chorus, this ensemble of singers and dancers whose singing and dancing reinforces the plot and in fact develops the plot as we move into the core of this tragedy, the Agamemnon of Aeschylus. And the very first words of the chorus focus on something very Iliadic. This is now the 10th year. That's exactly the way the Iliad started. Not at the beginning of the Trojan War, but in the 10th year of the Trojan War. And this medium of Aeschylus, which is tragedy, is self-consciously connecting with the medium of epic, as exemplified primarily by the Homeric Iliad. And in this context of Athenian state theater, the tragedy of the Agamemnon, that's what we call this tragedy, actually recapitulates the plot of the Iliad, except that part of the plot is taken over by a simile, a comparison. And that comparison has to do with two predatory birds whose nestling has been robbed by another animal. I'm saying predatory birds because, as we'll see the plot of the Oresteia trilogy develop, the idea of what animals are predatory and what animals are victims becomes all important. But here, what interests me is that, in a sense, the predatory animal is the victim, or so it seems, because some sneaky animal has robbed the nest of these predatory birds of the nestlings. And instead of talking directly about the kidnapping or abduction of Helen by Paris, aka Alexander, you have this vision of two predatory birds, let's call them eagles, screaming vengeance for the injustice that has been committed against them since their nestling is robbed. And there's a cosmic sanction that kicks in here. By cosmic sanction, I mean where it's not just members of a society who react to something that injures society, but rather where the cosmos itself reacts to that injury. It's almost as if whatever injury happens injures not only society, but also the cosmos. And so whatever injury the predatory birds have experienced, the reaction comes from the cosmic powers. I'm thinking of the lines, this is 59 or thereabouts, and against the transgressors, the god sends a fury, Erinus, at last, though it was late in coming. And only then do we hear, this is how it was when the sons of Atreus were sent by Zeus. Houtō, that same word that we saw before in the fable, the Ainos of the lion cub, signaling that, watch out, a fable is coming. Here too, houtō, this is how it was when, signals that the image of the birds and how their nestling was abducted is somehow a riddle for what happens to Agamemnon and Menelaus, the leaders of the Trojan expedition, and how Helen was robbed from them and taken to Troy. And then it's wonderful the way the choral song and dance encapsulates it all. We hear these words, and it all moves to fulfillment. Teleîsthai, telos, the idea of a process reaching its fulfillment, which you can think of either as a straight line, something that happens from A to B, or maybe something that comes full circle. We'll see more about how you can look at telos both ways, even in this context. But the important thing is that this retelling of the Iliad by way of the other medium, the medium that's an alternative to epic, which is tragedy, this retelling of the Iliad has embedded in it a riddling way of trying to understand what is at stake morally in the whole Trojan War. Why did it happen? How does it fit into the great scheme of things that is the cosmos? That is the kind of moral problem that tragedy explores in its own way.